In this video, I'm going to talk about your first computer exercise. I'm going to talk about how to bring data in R and how to apply some commonly used function in R, and also how to attach data and how to extract some of the observations or some of the values that you need in R. So let's get started. The first thing you need to do is install this package dplyr. If you have not already installed it, you can go to Tool, install package, and install this package here. You have to do it only once. After you have it on your machine, you have to call this library dplyr. This library helps you to apply different functions. Those are not already in the base R package. Step 1 is to download the data from the Cengage system to your computer. Also make sure that you bring data from the Cengage to your machine every time, because the Cengage system changes data from student to student. So if you are downloading one data, it may be different from the data that another student will download. Okay, so step 1, download the data on your machine. Step 2 is load your file in R. So I'm going to use this load function and choose file. I have already explained this function in another video. I'm going to upload a different data set for this example. Okay, so here I have a 401k data set, and after you will bring the data in R, it will have two files. As you can see here, a data file which will contain your data set and a description data. So if you click on this data set, you can look at the whole data set. And this description file, it will show you what each variable is representing. For example, age is the age of a person, and P rate is the participation rate in percentage form. Whenever you look at any data set or start working on any data set, it is a very good idea to be familiar with the data set. Step 3 is to attach this data set. And also, when we brought this data set in R, the data is called data. Whatever the name of the data is here, you will attach that data set. In this case, it is data. So I'm going to attach data. So this will make the data ready for analysis. So as you can see here, the following objects are masked, so which means that our data was attached correctly. Now the data is ready, we can apply different functions, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples of the type of functions that you can apply on this data set. The first function that I'm going to apply is called a summary function, and you will probably use it extensively in this class. Make sure that you are passing the correct data set or the name of the data in this summary function. In our case, our data was called data. Run this command and see, now we have a summary of the whole data set. There are 8 variables in this data set. It is apparent from here as well. It's telling you there are 8 variables, and you can look at the different values here. So this summary function is providing you the minimum value, the first quartile, the median, mean, and the maximum value of each variable. For example, participation rate is in percentage, so we know it's got to be between 0 and 100. So the minimum participation rate in 401k plan is 3%, the maximum is 100%, and the average is about 87%. Just by looking at these summary statistics, we have a kind of idea about these variables. There are some other useful functions that you can apply. For example, you can get the minimum value for the participation rate. Note that here I'm passing the name of the variable in the minimum function to get the minimum value of this particular variable. And if you want to know the minimum age in the data set, you have to apply this age variable in this function. You can get the maximum value for the participation rate. It is 100%. We already knew this from this summary function. Nevertheless, this is another way of getting these two values. A mean value, it will give you the average of any variable. Similarly, this function standard deviation, it will give you the standard deviation of any variable. In this case, it is 16.71. Next, I'm going to show you how to use dplyr function to filter some of the data that you need for your first computer exercise. I have given you a whole course on data camp, which will give you an idea about how to use dplyr package. So I'm going to extract some values. First, I'm going to extract values where participation rate is 100. So let's call this P rate 100. So I'm interested in knowing how many observations have participation rate exactly equal to 100. I'm going to run this command, and now I have the data with participation rate exactly equals 100. So let's look at this data set. So see, participation rate is 100. We may be interested in people with the participation rate more than 50%, participation rate greater than or equal to 50. So this is the way of extracting some of the values, and you can use these values in your computer exercise. To know more about these logical operators, go to this link. This link will give you more information about how to use these logical functions. Another useful function is the correlation function. We may be interested in knowing what is the correlation between participation rate and age, whether age has any effect on participation rate. So we may expect that older people tend to participate more in 401k plan. The correlation is kind of weak. It is 0.16%. We may define correlations in three categories: weak correlation, moderate correlation, and strong correlation. I will talk about those correlations in a future video, but here it is weak. It is less than 33% or 0.33. It is considered as a weak correlation. Anything above 70 or 67, it is considered as a strong correlation. Participation rate and age, those are weakly correlated with each other. Another statistics that may be useful, especially for this computer exercise, it is called the coefficient of variation, and the formula is standard deviation divided by the mean value. You can either calculate it manually by plugging in these values, 16 divided by 87, or run this formula and it will give you the coefficient of variations. And remember, we can use R as a calculator, and this is exactly what I'm doing here. I'm applying these functions, and then I'm extracting these values, and then I'm dividing standard deviation by mean value to get the coefficient of variation. Another question asks you to calculate the percentage difference. The formula for percentage difference is initial value, the current value, you take the difference and divide it by the initial value. If you're not familiar with how to calculate a percentage, I would recommend looking at this formula. So this is the first method. We're going to divide the difference between the initial and the current value by the initial value and multiply it by 100, and we'll get the percentage difference. For example, I'm interested in knowing if the price increases from 20 to 30, what is the percentage increase? It's 50% increase. We can also calculate percentage difference using the log method. There are two methods that you can use. You can either use this formula. For example, we are interested in knowing what is the percentage difference between the price of 30 and price of 20. You can simply divide 30 by 20 and then take the log of the result and multiply it by 100, and it will give you a percentage. So in this case, the percentage is 40%. So I have to run this whole command. So it is 40%. Okay. And another way of doing this is remember log of x divided by log of y. It is log of x minus log of y, and it will give us exactly the same value. Okay, so these are some of the useful functions that you can apply. Remember, the goal here is not to get everything correct, especially in the beginning of the course. Rather, the goal is to go through the process and start learning. At the end of the course, you will be very comfortable in applying all these functions. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.